Hello, everyone. I want to share something with you that I find quite interesting. I'm just doing a reading in the evening, still in my robe and in comfortable clothes. And this is a reading about my guides. I'm not going to share everything, but I wanted to share these two cards because I found them the most profound. And I also wanted to update all of you in my witchy community because obviously a lot has happened and I've been away and back for I don't even know how long, too long. And I just wanted to give all of you a brief if you haven't been able to keep up with my community tab, which I don't blame you because there's just too much. And yeah, enough said. These two cards were my questions to whether I should seek out new spirit guides or what area of my life do I have to focus on right now in finding guides. And spirit guides come and go. I recently had a very huge loss of all my relationships, including my spiritual ones. And for me, that's a pretty big one because I've never been without any type of contact with spirit, and not because, or a spirit, not because I wanted to, but it's just sort of always been there my whole life. It's been with me since I was a girl. I didn't really ask for it. I just kind of always saw them. So this is a very empty and interesting period for me where I just don't know what to do. I've never been in this place before, and I've been in this place for a long time. I find this purification card interesting because this is the question of what area of my life, what type of spirits do I want around me? How do I want them to help me, kind of thing. And that's definitely what I need. I need spirits that will help me heal and nurture myself back to a thriving state, or at the very least, a stable state. And I've also been dealing with my family a lot too, because my father is passing, and him and I did not have a good relationship. In fact, he was not as extreme as some, but he was abusive to me. That does mean physically a little bit too. Just, he wasn't beating me, nothing like that. But he was threatening me physically. And the reason I bring this up is because him passing has put me in this weird, awkward position of trying to help my mother help him as he is passing, and going through all of these emotional stuff, feelings, baggage, unresolved conflicts. And it's hard to talk about and even to process sometimes. And these cards definitely hit home, but they bring a new, interesting relationship with my spirit guides that I've never had before. And that's the point that I'm making about this. In the witchy community, there is a strong emphasis on working with deities, with gods, with demigods, with sometimes daemons or just other spirits, and there's not enough talk about working with spirits for self-healing, or it's kind of frowned upon. You know what I mean? It's seen as, oh, you do that new age stuff where you believe in angels and spirits that will help you for the good. And it doesn't mean that walking through darkness is not healing. In my case, it definitely is, especially right now. But there's such a greater emphasis on shadow work and the dark that I don't really know a whole lot of very well balanced witches that work with spirits that help them in their healing pursuits. And I myself don't feel like I could work with angels, but I mean, at this point, I will believe anything at this point, because this is new territory for me completely. And like I said, I'm just left in a state of I don't know what to do. So I know this video is like long and rambly, but that's kind of what I wanted to say. Is it made me ask the question, why not? Why not as a witch, even if I make offerings to my spirit guides or work with my spirit guides, however that works. Some people work with their ancestors and they make offerings. Why not have that type of relationship? And that's another thing. This deck is my shamanic deck, so it emphasizes a lot on the ancestors, and I've been thinking a lot about my ancestors, but I also don't feel called to necessarily make an altar and work with them. So that leaves me thinking about I can't see myself working with fairies. To be honest, I see myself working more with unicorns or celestial beings, things like that. Not quite angels, but, kind of on the border maybe. I've been debating about dragons, actually, because I had a couple of experiences that kind of blew my mind. But even, especially with stuff like that, there's such an emphasis on respect and to not be afraid of those things, that I think what gets missed is the good in working with spirits like that. That's just something that I've observed, something I've been thinking about, and because I'm starting to experience the good side of this, it's making me question, what kind of practice do I want? What kind of relationship do I want with my spirit guides? What kinds of guides do I want around me? Why do I want them there? All from these two cards. I can't even tell you how profound this pull was for me. And this wasn't even, I pulled a similar card, actually two, both of them, from another deck. I pulled two very similar cards to these. So this is definitely something I need to pay attention to. And I also see a lot of themes going on with some of my other cards too. For my family and everything else, I did get, family, but I got like exile, and I don't know. This is just such a weird time for me. And this is another one. This was the question of like, how do I rekindle that relationship? What should I do? What action should I make? And I came up with friendship. And I'm like, I once was friends with my guides. And I also know that I didn't rightfully ever seek out my spirit guides. Like, that's the weird thing with me. When I became a witch, I didn't go through that period of, okay, you're a baby witch now. You have to figure out how to connect with your guides. They were just there, okay? And now they're just not. A lot of my relationships with my guides are no longer. In fact, none of them. I walked away from pretty much all of them. And that may sound strange to people, but as someone who does see spirits constantly, which I know that's not the norm, and I'm definitely not like, I'm not trying to make myself out to be like, an all-knowing, wise man or something. So don't make assumptions there, but I do see them constantly, and because of that, this is really weird to me. This is me starting my journey over again and actually feeling the struggles of what a quote unquote baby witch feels. And that is really interesting because I really thought that I knew I had to go back and learn these basic things, and I tried to. But I felt like I was being pushed past those things, and I still am. Like, I still have my gifts. And in some ways, I do know some advanced things. But, cycles. You have to go back and review sometimes. But I've never done this on such a profound level. And I think it's because I haven't started at the beginning. I haven't reviewed. Everyone always just goes, oh, well, she's gifted. She doesn't have to go. And I was she at the time. She doesn't have to go and seek out her spirit guide. She already knows she's fine. And they just sort of put me on a pedestal and pushed me to do things in some cases that I felt were above my level. And I'm paying for that now. So, stay in witchy school, kids. I just realized that I've never told my story on YouTube, ever. Or to anyone. These are things that I've really never told anyone. So I got a few crystals. This one I know you've seen before, but I need it for this story. This is a snow quartz. And of course the turquoise. And I lost the original obsidian that I had. This is a rainbow sheen obsidian. Although it looks more golden, so I suspect it just has a little more gold in it. But I do actually see the rainbow in certain lights. And sight-wise, that's really hard for me as well. So I had to have someone help me pick this out. Just so you all know, I'm going to be totally transparent. But I also knew and could identify what it actually was. So these three were my first crystals. And it really started from something that happened to me when I was very little. And I ended up being around some not so nice and unpleasant spirits when I was little. And so I've never went through the process of asking myself whether or not these are my guides. I just talk to spirits and assume they are my guides. Now, when you do a shamanic journey, one of the questions that they have you ask is, are you my guide? Did I call you? And there's an ongoing debate about wandering versus discipline, which I don't want to get into with elders in our younger generation. Anyway, these are the crystals that just fell into my hands pretty easily and I couldn't let go. This one too, this one's my grandmother's. She gave me all her rocks and I didn't expect that, so I have tons of them. That's one of the reasons why I don't like to buy too many of them, because I already have a lot. And I very much appreciate that because she was really into geology too, which got me started on a really good path with crystals. And like I said, that isn't necessarily me saying New Age is a bad thing, but it's definitely something that I didn't really know if I wanted for my practice. And I'm starting to realize why I actually did want it for my practice. And it's made me question, do I really want to be a witch? Which is a terrible question to ask yourself. But I ask it because perhaps I just want to be spiritual. And that's okay too, I could just totally be spiritual and not be New Age or believe in anything. It doesn't mean that I'm into chaos magic or that I'll get into, cherry picking. But it does mean that I might just be a very spiritually driven person without necessarily picking a tradition or having an actual practice. It might just apply to my life sometimes. And that's an option I never really thought about, because quite frankly, when I'm sensing a whole lot of things all the time, it's really hard sometimes to keep a practice. And all of that said, because all of these things happen to me, I kind of wonder, well, now that things are not happening to me, can I get used to, there we go, can I get used to the peace? Can I get used to just things not happening? And that makes me think about adventure, movement versus stagnancy and very slow change, which is something that I'm not used to. And that's why this story is significant. I've never been on a shamanic journey to meet my guides, and when I do, I know who I'm meeting because it's already been there. And sometimes your guides dictate what your practice or your spiritual life will be. And that's the profound, interesting thing that's ahead of me, is total unknowing. I mean, in some ways I kind of do sense things, but it's still a time of really not being quite sure of myself. I hope that makes sense. In shamanic practice, I was first introduced to spirit and soul, and very briefly we were let know that they were two different things, and that was very profound for me. And it's interesting because I was always curious about that, and those are the things that I really needed to learn now, and the things that I'm really tapping into. I've never prayed or asked God or the angels when I was Catholic, anything like that. I was seeking out religion or spiritual discipline when I was little. I never really said, can you show yourselves to me? You know, who are my guides? Who are you? Like, do I have a family? Do I have ancestors? And whenever I've tried to look for them, I've always run into this interesting situation with these other spirits of fear. And I've been told by many that it's me, and to a certain point, I'm sure it is. That's warping things. That's definitely true. But there was actual spirits around, in the beginning at least, and well into my teens, that were messing with me. And so it's been really hard to filter out the difference between my fear and what's actually affecting my connection and what is spirit activity that's messing with me. You know what I mean? And that is where I needed to seek healing. I believe that I needed definitely spiritual healing, if not soul healing. And I know everyone's going through this as well, so that's definitely a factor in this story. Not trying to get all choppy on you, but this is a difficult story to tell, so it's easier in pieces. It's interesting that I've sort of come to full circle with all this stuff, because the first real actual relationship that I've ever had with any kind of deity that felt so extremely real to me that I just couldn't even deny it was actually with Jesus at my church. And yeah, I know I said Jesus in a witchcraft community. Too bad. I'm going to talk about it anyway. This was part of my development, and I find myself in my journey going back to that. Not that I'm going to go back and become Christian again, but I'm going back to that because that was a good connection. And it's making me question, what kind of connections do I want to have? What actually is for me? And of course, there's a time when you have to sort of surrender and give your ego a knock in the head because it refuses to listen. You know, for me, it goes, oh, we're talking about Jesus. I'm going to turn this conversation off right now. And so that's been a very humbling and also a very terrifying full circle experience for me. I just want to make a quick note here that yes, people use soul and spirit interchangeably, and knowing they are two different things can change absolutely everything. I'm really excited that this story is finally going up on YouTube because I want to hear from other people that might be gifted. And maybe they went through a similar struggle. I know I hear from a lot of people that are gifted now, and it's really interesting to listen to their experiences. But I'd love to compare notes. Definitely in the comments, if anybody has anything to say about any of this, that would be fantastic. I'm hoping that this story will kind of reset things for me and reset my YouTube channel, and just as a way of being truthful with myself about where I am too. Who knows? Maybe this will be a featured video. All right. I will see you next time. Happy full moon in Capricorn.